On this episode of Audiobook Club, Murder on the Tokyo Railway.
She tugged him over to the yellow warning strips at the platform's edge and squinted down the tunnel at the next express. She could hear it approaching. She craned her neck to see the front lights coming out of the darkness. She placed her hands just above his elbows and looked into his face. He smiled back giddily and flopped forward, thinking she was going to kiss him again, or whisper a sexy secret. Her lips were set as rigid as a no mask. Then with her left hand, she tugged his wrist down and pried her other hand under his arm. She planted her sandals and took a deep breath. He looked at her with glassy-eyed confusion, swaying and blinking and nearly asleep. She could feel the rumble of the train as it sped along the length of the platform toward them. It was all over in one fluid motion. In the confusion that followed the long, scared howl, cut short by a muffled thump and harsh screech of brakes, no one noticed the woman gliding swiftly up the escalator.
Hello, I'm Steve Phillips, and welcome to another episode of Audiobook Club, the audiobook review and recommendation podcast that is full of empty Eastern promises. You join us here in the wee small hours of a rainy Tokyo night in a pathology facility in the basement of a large but anonymous government building. The title undergoing dissection here is Michael Pronko's The Last Train, the first in his series of Detective Hiroshi novels. Joining us from Adelaide, as ever, in Australia, rib spreader in hand, is Matt Layton. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Steve. Technically, that's called a finocchietto retractor. It's the actual name for one of those rib spreaders.
Really? Bless you. Thanks for letting me know that. That's great. We're also very delighted to have two very special guests from very different parts of the globe. So joining us from Oslo is the proprietor and editor-in-chief of the AudioBookblog.com. It's the man who recommended we listen to this week's title in the first place. His name is Victor Dima. Hello, Victor.
Hello, everyone. Really nice to be here. Thank you for having me again. Matthew will probably hate this, but we will see.
Now, there's a preview.
Yeah. I've worked with him before, Steve. Basically, all I'm saying is
I worked with Matthew
luck.
before.
Yeah, good luck reigning in the chaos.
You sound so ambivalent about that, Victor. I'm so sorry. I do it every
No,
week.
it's okay.
And joining... Let's see if you make it through this next hour. And joining us from Tokyo, not only is he the man behind the Detective Hiroshi novels and Professor of American Literature at, I just need to check the pronunciation of your university here, Michael. I've got Meiji Gakuin University.
Oh, that is correct. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I told you, Matt. I told you I could do
A+ for that one. Yeah.
It's Michael Pronko. Thank you so much for joining us. And really appreciate our first author on the podcast. And really, really grateful to have you here. So, Matt, this is the first time we've had two guests on. How are we going to wrangle this one?
Well, I think we'll do it in the usual way. So it's a 4-stage process, Steve. First of all, we will ask the person who recommended the book to us why on earth they've made us commit 10.5 hours of our lives, in this case, to said book. We don't recommend things lightly on this program because we know it involves not only a financial commitment, but a time one as well. And then we'll have a deeper dive. And as always, we start with a bit about the author. And in this case, we have the author with us, so he can tell me what I'm getting wrong as we do it. Then we look at the book itself, and then we'll have a chat about it as an audiobook, about the narration and the production and how it sounds, basically.
So, Victor, you recommended that we read The Last Train for this week's recommendation. How did you come across The Last Train and this series of Michael's?
Well, it was a really interesting experience working with Michael. He reached out to me and asked if I am willing to review the audiobook. I did, of course. I'm always open to new opportunities and to discover new authors. So after listening to the audiobook, I wrote a review. I absolutely loved the audiobook. I don't need to explain you why, because I say so. It is a fantastic story from an award-winning author. The Lost Train has a lot of awards. and in print version, and the audiobook should receive some awards as well, because Peter did an absolutely fantastic work there. So it's murder, it's Tokyo, it's Japan, it's a character that feels real and alive. What more can you need?
Well, that's kind of where I was going with the next question here, you talk about why you recommend it. What is it about this series that really pushes your buttons?
Extremely well done character development, fantastic descriptions. I mean, you feel like you are in Tokyo and walking in those characters' shoes. That's one of the most important things. As I said, absolutely fantastic writing. I love it.
I got that too, actually, Victor.
Yeah.
I did feel like I was walking the streets. It felt. I was trying to talk about this, actually. I mentioned this to you. Might have mentioned this to you the other day, Matt. But I was getting vibes of. Do you remember the movie Sin City? You ever seen it? It's sort of shot in sort of black and white, and it's very it's just very, very raw and very kind of. I was getting those sort of feelings, and it was very. Everything just felt very.
I went for Blade Runner. I like a good dystopian future, and Michael, I think you've described one that already exists in this book. I was going to bring up a contentious point later, Michael, and I'll do it now instead, which is I think that there are two main characters in this book. I think there's Detective Hiroshi, and I think there is the city of Tokyo is also a character. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so, because I think in all really, well done novels, right? The place is really important, but there's something about Tokyo to me that's very alive, and people really interact with the city, and so I definitely think that Tokyo is a character, or rises almost to the level of being a character. It's not just the background, but it really kind of determines events and how things happen.
I've never actually been to Japan. Obviously, you live there. It's very much associated with The Other. I very much enjoyed, I don't know if you saw it, James May's Amazon series, Our Man in Japan, which, again, I think tried to have a similar scope of the textures of the country that you brought to it, because it's not just the rainy night times, is it? So there's other stuff in there.
No, there's other things too, like some of the things that people might feel are exotic are also exotic to Japanese people. I mean, most of my students, for example, would live in a kind of apartment that if you were set in the middle of this apartment, you wouldn't know what country you were in, sort of, So, but I think that's true. You always react to what's around you in Japan, and it can be very dull at times, but then, you turn the corner and here's this, wow, wait, what is this? Where am I? Kind of feeling. And I think that's what makes Tokyo really unique. And you don't see things sometimes. A friend of mine was visiting recently. She was a classmate at college, and she said, wow, what's inside all these things? And because a lot of the life is inside and you don't see it, but it kind of calls out to you like, you can't see in here, but what do you think's in here? That's my feeling pretty often.
That interested me as well. And I think I got it. I think one of the aspects of it is there's a certain amount of loneliness involved in living in Tokyo, as much as it's vibrant. Have you felt that? And is that part of what influenced your characters?
Yes, I think so. Detective Hiroshi is somebody who has left Tokyo for several years and lived in America. And so upon returning, he's not quite a typical Japanese anymore, right? He's a little more global minded, a little bit outside looking in at times. And so I think he feels a little bit lonely to live with kind of a double vision in a sense, right? He sees it from outside, but he feels it from inside, right? And yeah, I think it's kind of lonely. I mean, all big cities are kind of isolating and alienating, and you can really see in Tokyo how people could spend the day alone. You commute alone. You might eat lunch alone. You might be working at your desk job alone, and then, when nighttime comes, you race off and finally meet your friends or and so there's that sense of kind of intense loneliness compensated for by getting together in some way. Right? But then after that, you got a 2-hour train ride home all alone again, right? So that's kind of how the city is set up, I think that's right.
Do you think that you drew on your own experiences there, Michael, to put that across in the novels there? Because obviously you were born in Kansas, right? So
yeah,
and obviously living in Japan via Kent, at the University of Kent as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you feel that is that the kind of thing you did there?
Oh yeah. I think kind of in the early years when I lived here, it felt very lonely. I mean, I always had my work and I was a teacher. So, you're kind of surrounded by people all day, whether you like it or not. But outside of that, it can be very, very isolating. And I think not just for foreigners living here, but for Japanese too, you can end up being quite lonely. But yeah, in the novel, I definitely draw on my own experiences and, my reactions to things and how I felt when I, for example, first went to Roppongi, kind of nightlife area, and just, whoa, it's just overwhelming, right? So I wanted to get some of those reactions into the characters, into the novel.
Yeah, it's interesting that the duality of like conforming in the daytime and then going and letting loose at night, which you talk about. Steve, unfortunately, we've got another reference to deviant recreational urinating for the second time in 6 months. Seems to come up quite a lot on this show. It upsets Steve. The golden shower upsets Steve somewhat. But that extreme that's in the book, and knowing some Japanese people myself, I have a friend, hello, Ayumi, and she didn't fit in because she had a slight disability, and maybe because that caused her to think differently, and she was never quite at home there and enjoyed coming to London and felt more accepted in London.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's a very reserved, the typical Japanese personality, I would say, is very reserved and kind of withdrawing. You don't show yourself or show your inner feelings. It would be embarrassing to do that, or kind of presumptuous in a way, to show, here's how I'm feeling, Japanese would never kind of do that. So they tend to keep a lot inside, and considering there's also a great deal of conformity and, pushing to be like everyone else, the steam's got to come out somewhere, sometime. And I think it does. I think it does in, kind of a party atmosphere. The end of the year is very wild. There's just parties and parties. And I think they have to let loose somehow, right? So definitely that happens. And letting loose, because it's so pent up, some of the letting loose goes in very strange directions. I mean, golden showers is the least of it, kind of. So yeah.
I just think we do some housekeeping and just go back to about our esteemed author who's joined us today, and also about the book itself for the uninitiated who join this podcast and are interested in hearing or indeed reading the last train. So, Matt, do you want to take this one over? You have the com.
I have the conch, do I?
Yes.
Yes,
Star Trek.
The author, Professor Michael Pronko, I got that right so far. Born in Kansas City. We've done this already. He's lived in Tokyo for 20 years. He studied philosophy at Brown University in the States, and then he has a PhD from the University of Kent in Canterbury. This should be all right, because what I've basically done is gone to his own personal website and deleted the word I was and I did and just put a load of bullet points. So I should be doing, am I doing okay so far, Michael?
I think that's it. I like the I, but except for the I, it sounds good.
And your PhD was on film adaptations of Dickens, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. And so that's also another kind of influence, because Dickens is really the master of describing cities.
Of course he is, yeah.
Life. Yeah, and so I would kind of take him as the master, because everything that happens in those Dickens novels is so deeply set inside the various different worlds of London, right? The different social levels and different places, and nobody really knows what the other kind of people are doing or how they're living. So Dickens was a great influence. Yeah.
So the obvious question is, after you'd done that, how did you end up in Tokyo?
Well, it wasn't quite a straight line. I had spent time in China, so I was a teacher in China for a couple of years, and then went back to the States. I did another degree in the States as well, in Wisconsin. So I was kind of, jumping back and forth across the Pacific, and traveled for a couple of years as well. But Tokyo just felt very comfortable to me. When I first came, I had a Japanese friend, and I lived with him. And, he's still a really good friend. I was one of the best men at his wedding, and, that kind of thing. So I always felt kind of comfortable here in Tokyo somehow.
Normally when you ask somebody that question, there's a love interest involved, either that has drawn them there or kept them there. Did that happen in your case?
Yeah, a little bit. My wife is Chinese, and so she's from Beijing, and I met her. She was a teacher when I was in Beijing, and so we met there. But, where are we going to live, in China or in America? Well, she wasn't such a great driver and didn't really adapt to America. And it's a little hard to live in China for a long time. So, Tokyo is really like the perfect balance of, Asian plus a little bit of Western kind of life. So that's kind of worked out really well on both of our parts,
So you actually took your love interest with you?
Yeah, well, she came of her own accord, seemingly, but it depends on the day on that one. So, yeah.
In terms of starting to write, so The Last Train, the book that we've just all consumed, came out in 2017.
Yeah.
How did you? I mean, I wouldn't know how to start. I would be daunted by the blank piece of paper. How do you just go about making nothing into a book? I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, and I wish I had a good answer, but here's a half good answer. How about that, if you can take that? I started to write a lot for different magazines and newspapers in Japan. And so this was kind of before the, kind of website, homepage, online boom, right? About 20 years ago. And so this is literally 15 years before you've published your book. You're already writing and honing your skills? That's right. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So at one point, I had about 7 or 8 deadlines a month. And while those were very short pieces, you really have to turn them in word perfect, right? So, 800, it's harder to write a short thing than a long thing. So, like I wrote for Newsweek Japan, and that was 700 words, and Japan Times, I wrote editorials, and those had to be 780 words, so there's room for the title up above. So I think that kind of got me over that hesitancy of the blank page because, the deadline's Thursday at noon. So there's no, you either start it right now or you suffer worse Thursday morning. So,
aren't those sometimes the best weeks? I certainly find doing this stuff on a weekly basis, the bit where you find yourself on Tuesday morning with nothing there. Sometimes I did one the other week where I didn't have a guest on and and the podcast version was 20 minutes as opposed to the normal 28 minutes because I cut out some of the additional fat that I put in. And the 20-minute thing that was left was actually better. I was more proud of it. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. So having to really hone things down to fit inside the newspaper or magazine, space, that was really invaluable. But, in writing those smaller pieces, I gradually started to feel like, I wanted a kind of bigger canvas. And I think with mystery novels, which are really concerned with, crime and, breaking not just the law, but breaking moral rules and ethical feelings, it's really a lot about that and punishment or no punishment and things like that. So that was a lot of what I wrote about on the editorials. But, I kind of started to feel like mystery and detective novels are, in a sense, a big editorial, right? Something's wrong. You don't write a novel because it's a sunny day and the birds are singing outside and everybody's happy. No one who wants to read that. There's nothing there, right? So there was kind of it wasn't that. I mean, it's hard to move from small size writing to big size writing, that's for sure. But novels are just pieces put together in a sense, right? So that makes it easier. Yeah.
What is it? I think it's somebody like Tarantino said, you've got to have, once you've got 70 Post-it notes on the walls with separate ideas on them, you've got enough scenes for a movie, that kind of idea.
Yes, that's it exactly. And I'd always, in teaching novels, American novels to my students, I always have to be more prepared than they are. And so I spent years outlining novels, outlining films. So I'd usually outline a film and give my students the basic outline. They fill in the rest. And for novels too, kind of do a chapter by chapter outline of the novels. So that really helped a lot to see that bigger.
That's very interesting. So basically what you're saying is that simultaneously you were writing for American publications about what it's like to be in Japan and explaining to Japanese people the structure of American novels and a foot in both camps, trapped between two worlds, whichever way you want to look at Detective Hiroshi, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And so, so that was easy to kind of consider somebody like Detective Hiroshi, to create him as a character, because he does kind of have a foot in two different worlds, two different ways of thinking about things. So I like that part of Hiroshi and can sympathize with that myself too. So.
Well, let's have a look at maybe at the Detective Hiroshi himself. Is like all good detectives, he has baggage, doesn't he, Matt? We noticed.
Yeah, he certainly does. And again, as Mike, he's an outsider as well, isn't he? You'd hope. And I guess like all the most likable detective, he drinks too much as well, which is,
Yes. Yeah, which is both kind of shocking and endearing, I suppose, in a way. But he drinks sake, Japanese sake. So that's another kind of drinking altogether, I suppose. Yeah.
It very much is. Do you know what? I've got two clips that I want to play you. I normally get into trouble, and whenever I do this on proper radio stations, they say, "Can you make the clips a bit shorter?" But I'm just about to play you a clip of one of the things that jumped out at me was when Hiroshi goes, they basically take a break for lunch.
Yeah,
And
right.
where Steve and I would go and pick up a sandwich and a can of Coke. And I apologize profusely, Michael, because I've hacked your beautiful work to pieces to get from a 4-minute clip to a 2-minute clip.
Okay.
But I just love, I think you know the bit I'm talking about, and I just love the atmosphere that comes from this piece here.
Takamatsu grabbed a rough wooden handle jutting out from a wood-paneled wall under a large cedar ball. A section of the wall rolled sideways. It was an opening so low, they had to bend over double and sidestep in. When they stood up inside, they were greeted by a booming, "Irashaimase!" from the master. Takamatsu apologized with slyly exaggerated excuses for not having come for a long time, and introduced Hiroshi to the master with formal language. Hiroshi bowed. Takamatsu hung his jacket on a hook and loosened his tie as if he owned the place. From a small warmer, the master drew out 2 steaming hot white towels with tongs. After wiping their faces and hands with the towels, the master leaned over the counter to set teensy dishes of pickled vegetables, crinkled and vinegary, on the counter. He fired up one of the small gas burners under a large pot of miso soup and wiped down the wooden cutting board. He cleaned his long sushi knife with a white towel. The master pulled back a brown curtain over a glass-sided refrigerator filled with sake bottles. He pulled out 2 small chilled glasses from the top shelf and set these on the upper counter inside small, square cedar wood boxes. The master shuffled the dozen or so bottles inside the fridge until he found the ones he wanted. Carrying these to the counter, he hoisted the large bottle of cold sake and, cradling it in the crook of his arm, poured out the clear, clean liquid. The sake flowed gently over the top of the lip of the glass into the box, arousing the aroma of cedar and fresh rice. He poured out sake from a different bottle for Hiroshi and placed both bottles on the counter so that each displayed the artful calligraphy of their labels. They bowed down like penitents to take the first sip without spilling. Then they plucked up the small, thumb-sized glasses for a silent toast before downing the second gulp. Finally, they poured the spillover from the cedar box into the glass, took another sip, and set their half-full glasses back inside the wet cedar boxes.
You've got to be happy with that, Michael. That's a beautiful piece of writing. That's so evocative. And again, apologies for the 2 minutes and 7 seconds that took. Yeah. But you need all of that, don't you, to convey...
Yeah.
You can't do that in 780 words, can you?
No, it's such, and that's such a kind of typical thing. I mean, I think most people would never notice that whole process, or they would take it for granted if, you'd lived here for a long time and grown up in Japan. But, from outside, it's like, oh, what is this? It's a ritual, and a really fascinating one. So, I wanted to kind of get that across, that this is really, how things are served. They don't just plunk a bottle in front of you, but take time. It's very delicate, yeah. And the other thing about that, I think, that is maybe a very Japanese thing, which is that, work is kind of conducted over drinks very often, right? And you socialize with the people you work with or that you have a relation with, but not even necessarily with your family as much, or they wouldn't come, right? You'd go out with, like, for example, at a university, I would go out with the other teachers, but I've never met their wives or anything, or, because, you just wouldn't talk about that. You go out to drink and complain about the problems at the university and the politics and, and things are kind of decided and kind of worked through in that social, exchange of eating and drinking together, which is so important here. Yeah.
So let's move on to the production of it, the audiobook version of The Last Train. And Victor, you recommended this as an audiobook to us, and talk us through the audiobook experience that you had, and the narrator and the performance.
Well, as you may know, this specific novel has been released in audiobook format, narrated by another voice actor. I think it's a friend of Michael's, right, Michael?
Yeah.
He did a fantastic job with it. But when the Corona pandemic took us all by surprise, let's say, he wasn't able to record the third book in the series. And Michael reached out to me because he knew that I was consulting also as for audiobooks, not only reviewing audiobooks. And he asked me if I can connect him with a good narrator. And my process was I am quite well connected with a lot of narrators. I speak with them on a regular basis. I listen to over 1,000 audiobooks. And I know what voice would best suit such wonderful writing as Michael has there.
Your choice was Peter Berkrot, yeah?
Yes. My suggestion, the choice was Michael's all the time, but my suggestion was Peter. And this suggestion of mine came after I listened to a lot of samples. From Peter. I reviewed audiobooks narrated by Peter in the past. And aside from that, I listened to other narrators. And I think there are like 6 narrators that I was considering, but Peter was the best choice, I think.
Yeah, and Victor kind of mentioned a few, and I had listened to quite a few narrators before as well, and a lot of them were just marvelous, but I didn't feel they quite caught the feel, kind of, line by line feeling of the work, but Peter just instantly got it.
Exactly.
And so when I heard him, wow, he just has.
I realized, because I know most narrators do a fantastic job, like researching everything, and the good narrators always reach out to the author or to someone who handles the author to ask if they don't know how to pronounce a word. And I'm sure Peter did this all the time, right, Michael?
Yes. I made up a kind of pronunciation guide from Japanese because there's lots of different Japanese words that if you look at it written in alphabet, it's kind of hard to guess.
I bet.
So I just made up a list, kind of chapter by chapter, right? In the clip you just played, they say "Irashaimase." Yeah. So that's just what any shop owner would say, and anybody living in Japan has heard that thousands and thousands of times.
It was the first time I heard it. So yeah.
Irashaimase means just basically welcome.
Okay.
Literally it means you have arrived.
Okay.
In polite Japanese, but basically any shop owner, or it could be a restaurant or even a small shop or a grocery store even, they would say that, welcome. So the people working there welcome the customers, right?
So I didn't realize before we started recording this that your relationship with Victor was as close, and that you'd worked together in this way. So here are my notes on what I thought of Peter's performance. Obviously, he's American, which is, I think, an important part of it. I think, again, he's got to be somewhere between American and Japan. I was going to ask you, did he have previous knowledge of Japanese culture, or were you leading him through it? The pronunciation stuff is interesting, but also there's he does most of the time, does a great job of softening the H on Hiroshi, doesn't he?
Yes,
and does that really well. And again, I don't know whether it was right or wrong, but the pronunciation of sake was very convincing to me. But he had no advanced knowledge of this. It was all stuff that you had held his hand through.
Well, I think he was really interested in
Yes.
Japanese culture. And so, he'd kind of had an interest and he's an actor, so actors are pretty broad-minded all around. So I don't think Japan was off his, it wasn't something totally alien to him, but his son had also kind of loved Japanese culture, so he kind of secondarily got it from that. But he just got the feeling of it very, very nicely. The different kinds of Japanese characters. And of course, it's all in English, right? So he really caught the feeling of that character. How would that character be in Japan? Older character or younger character or something. So he really, he just entered into the spirit of that and really got the feeling.
Yeah. And he
that
sounds
well.
like someone living there. He sounds like, let's say, an American living in Tokyo. He's soft spoken. He's like really chill, really, really easy, like polite all the time, So that came out to me all the time when listening to him. And now he's on fifth book? He recorded the fifth book?
Yeah, he did the fifth book. Yeah, I've got him slated for the sixth book. I've got to finish it first. But, but now sometimes, when I'm writing, I hear the character's voice. And it'll kind of come through. Yeah, it'll come through Peter's voice.
Yeah.
Peter's voice doing this character. It's like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
So,
so put some really weird
So has that changed for you, Michael?
Names there. Put them in there. Okay, we want to see how he does.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe throw a few African names in just to confuse him. That would be great.
Well, I thought about that. I did put, when I made that list for him, I put a couple of mispronunciations in there just to kind of rib him. I had to quickly correct it, but yeah.
Just in your head, Michael, when you were writing the book, so obviously before Peter came on board, I'm guessing you had some sort of other voice in your head when Hiroshi was speaking or any other character. And I guess over time, clearly Peter has resonated with you that much that actually the voice has changed to Peter's. Would that be right?
I think that's it exactly. I have that kind of voice. Anytime you write and you're writing dialogue, you really think about that or their thoughts. You hear it, right? And it's something that you have to really. It's a kind of stage production in your mind, in a sense, right? And so you're hearing them back and forth, and with the enunciation and the way it's said. And I think he just grabbed that very strongly and entered into that. So now I hear his voice sometimes as I'm writing new dialogue. It has kind of taken over in a way. It's very interesting. I don't know how that works exactly, but it does. It works anyway.
You're not the first person to say that to us. We've had Ben Aronovich on, who is a British author who wrote a series called The Rivers of London, which we highly recommend. And the voice actor did such a good job that again he writes with that voice in his head, and the two have fed off each other. But like you, he would put in a Bangladeshi Northern Irish character, female, just to stitch up the voice artist. So as a listener myself, and remember, I didn't have as much an attachment to the text as either of you did. I would describe him as competent, which is actually the second highest compliment you can get on this show. I think that's mainly because what you want to do is you want to not notice a voice artist in many ways as a listener. As an author, of course, you're very attached to the text. Me, I'm trying to consume the text for the first time. And, they're often doing their job better. If you notice them, it's often because they've made a mistake, and one mispronunciation can I always say that word wrong, can ruin the rest of the book for you. I was reading a book once where a British voice actor had to refer to an American car as a Camaro, and I just had to put the book down after that.
Yeah.
I had so there are two things that I wanted to ask you about. Obviously,
Like a
you have
spelling mistake, right?
like a spelling mistake, but you have
you takes you right out of the flow. Right?
But like an audio version of that. So there are a
Yeah.
couple of things that I can tell you've put some thought into, and I want to find more about. The first one of those is the extent to which the Japanese accent, you allowed him to use it, I guess, or encouraged him to use it, or let him use it. And then there's a more complicated bit about his use of his interpretation of female characters and their dialogue, which I wanted to talk about. But first of all, how do you avoid basically leaving him sounding like a racist? Frankly, it's very subtly done. There's intonation there, but not accent. Does that make sense? Is that how you went about it?
Yes, it is actually, and Peter's really great. When he first did some samples, he was very concerned about that and sent them to me, and please listen to this and be sure this is right. Does this sound right? So yeah, it's intonation, and I think there's a certain rhythm that he catches very well, right? Because every language has its own rhythm, right? I mean, it just moves in time in a very different pattern. And I try, I'm writing in English, what would a Japanese person say? And then I'm translating it to English as I'm writing. And so I want
as you're saying this sentence out loud, you're also being very conscious of your own rhythm.
Yes, that's right. That's it exactly, and too conscious maybe, but and then and you want to catch that so that you don't want like a young Japanese woman to have a kind of I don't know, American teen. Oh, I don't like that, or you don't want that. You don't want it to become American. But if it's too Japanese, as you say, it could be a kind of racist stereotype.
Misappropriation.
Right. Yeah, misappropriation of that. I did have one character who was Japanese but had learned English many years ago in the 50s. And so he spoke English incorrectly. And I wanted that to be there. And Peter was good. He kind of caught that would be accented English. But then when that character speaks Japanese, of course, he has to speak fluently. So how do you represent, those differences? It gets a little tricky, but yes, I think that's right. You don't want it to sound like a stereotype of somebody who doesn't speak the language well, right?
You've taken my bait. You mentioned women. As a listener, it's some of the representations that Peter does of Japanese women jarred with me. But then I remembered I had a voice in the back of my head who was like you, a mentor of mine who was American and lived in Japan and was a journalist and a writer. And remember him explaining to me that the way that Japanese women talk. I'm going to play you a clip, and then can we discuss stuff like register? I'll play you a clip of your own writing. Look at me.
Again.
And then maybe have a talk about how it all works. But I felt slightly uncomfortable. I often feel uncomfortable when a man is trying to portray a female character.
Yes.
And then you add the extra lens of Japanese onto it. Let's have a listen to this.
Yeah, let's listen.
You have to see her before you leave, Reiko said. If I have time. Michiko shook her head. I've been sending her money. She stopped sending it back, finally. That's not the same as seeing her, Reiko said. She doesn't want me around her daughter. That's not true. She's a good student, Natsumi told me. Like you were.
That treads the fine line, I think, Michael. What do you think when you hear that back in isolation?
Yeah, well, some of those things you want them to speak softly, because I think Japanese women do speak softly.
So,
And even when they're kind of talking together, right, with nobody listening in, if women speak with men or in a group with men, they would definitely speak more softly. It's just a kind of...
Is deferential the right word?
Well, it depends on the situation, right? I mean, Japanese women can be just as non-deferential as women in any country, and just as assertive and angry and forthright. But in general, I think they tend to speak more deferentially. But men do a little bit as well. But I think in that case, I think it's always difficult when a male narrator is trying to do female voices. That's just very hard, right? So do you make it overly feminine so it draws attention to their femininity? Or do you keep back and hopefully the story keeps going and you're kind of, anonymous in the voices in the background, the characters are in the foreground? I just think that's a really hard thing to finesse.
I think you can certainly hear there are two different female characters in the voices that he gives them there, and
Absolutely.
one of them actually might be slightly. One of them is sexy, and one of them is slightly irritating. I think is not an unfair way of putting it, but I think my point is, as long as you're happy with the fact that the voice artist got it right, because it's your text and you have the ear for it. I think I am. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think I am. I mean, there's a certain degree of, interpretation that voice actors have. And so, there from time to time there are ways that I have to stop and say, "Oh, okay, well that's how he hears that." Right. And especially like in some narrated parts, like a description of Tokyo at the beginning, you don't want the voice to be, "Tokyo is an amazing city of millions of people." You don't want it to sound like that.
The Dickens
right. Back to the Dickens voice. Yeah. But you want it to be kind of a broad view so that you can see in your mind what that
encompassing
narrated description is. Yeah. And so sometimes, the voice actor really does have his interpretation of that, but that's okay. That's, I think with him, I was very satisfied with his interpretations that were different than mine, but almost all of them were the same as mine. Mm-hmm. So, that's very satisfying and surprising too. Yeah.
So, Michael, I don't know if you noticed, but during the course of our discussion, you let slip the two words "book 6." So we have to, in these sort of shows, you see these in TV shows, on podcasts and so on, in which case where the interviewer will ask you, "So what can you tell us about book 6?" And you say, "I can't tell you anything, otherwise you won't buy the book." So if we just go through if we take that as read, I'll just ask you the question. You just say, "I can't tell you that, Steve," and then we'll move on.
I can hear you.
So Michael.
No, Steve, I can take it up here. So we can tell you about book 6 that it will be narrated by Peter Berkrot.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. There, you heard it here first. Yes. I was going to, Michael, based on your reply, of course, there, I will just say the words. So, Michael, what can you tell us about book 6?
Nothing. No, of course. Yeah.
Have you done it yet?
Yeah. Well, it's not finished yet. That's the primary thing. No, it's on the way, and it's the same cast of characters. There's a couple of new characters that started in the last book. So a female detective who's helping out, and then Hiroshi has a few more personal issues. But again, it's set in Tokyo, but this time it's set in an area of Tokyo, which is kind of the older part of Tokyo, called Shitamachi, which is the eastern part of Tokyo. And so far, I haven't really had much action or much of the setting, set there in that part of Tokyo. But at least to me, I love that part of Tokyo. And I don't know why I didn't put anything there yet. So I'm trying to kind of correct that. But again, like the other parts of Tokyo, no, each part of Tokyo has its own sort of set of conflicts and set of fascinating points, different kind of food, different kind of people, different layout of that area of the city. And
different places to murder people.
Yes, right, exactly, of course. Any place is good for that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Michael, for that. Thank you, Victor, as well, for joining us today. Can't wait for book 6. No pressure on the deadline there, Michael. But it's been a pleasure to listen to it and the performance as well. So yeah, many thanks so much for joining us. We'd love to have you back on once book 6 is out in the ether and out there on the net and all good platforms and some bad ones as well, just all the platforms. Yes, we won't go into pirated bootleg versions. I don't even want to mention that. But thank you so much for coming up, for taking the time to come on and talk to us today. That was The Last Train, a Detective Hiroshi novel, Volume 1 by Michael Pronko, narrated by Peter Berkrot. It comes in at a fantastic 10 hours and 41 minutes of detective crime action and highly recommended by us. I think we can say that, Matt.
Yeah, I would. I'm looking forward to book 2, let alone book 6. Hopefully,
I'm doing it for the listeners, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have a lot of time. You have time.
We'd love to have you back on, Michael. In fact, I'd like, if we can, Steve, because we always at this bit we look forward to what we're going to do in our next episode. I wonder if you could ask cheekily our guests to give us an audiobook recommendation, and then maybe you can drag them back. How about that for forward planning?
There's an idea. So we can ask both Michael and Victor this question there. So if I can ask you, Victor, first, what audiobook would you recommend we review?
Well, since I always say that Detective Hiroshi and Michael's writing reminds me a lot of Michael Connolly's Detective Harry Bosch.
It's going to be a Bosch.
Yeah, it's going to be the Bosch. So I highly recommend that you check out The Desert Star by Michael Connolly, the latest Detective Harry Bosch series. It's absolutely beautiful. Los Angeles is there. Bosch is there. His daughter is there. So it's for Harry Bosch lovers. It's something that they cannot miss. And we have also the amazing TV shows that I love and I know Matthew loves as well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So, The Desert Star by Michael Connolly.
Michael's nodding as well.
Good.
Yeah, I don't have that audiobook, but I have that book in my Kindle.
You need to get it because it is narrated by Titus Welliver. It's narrated by the actor. Wow. So that's the most interesting thing about this series. Because at first it was narrated by my dear departed friend, Dick Hill. And now, I think for 6 or 7 years, from when the first season of Bosch came out, the narrator is Titus Welliver. And he does a fantastic job with it. Yeah. And there's also another narrator joining him for the female part. Yeah, for Detective Ballard.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Yes. So,
Victor, it's on the list. It is on the list. Michael, is there any audiobook you're recommending at the moment? I love?
I hate to confess I'm kind of late to audiobooks, but I started listening a lot more during my commute. I used to read during my commute, but once, the pandemic hit, everybody is masked on the Tokyo trains, even now, still. So between the mask and my glasses, it would fog up. So I couldn't read on the train anymore. So I kind of edged over towards listening to a lot of audiobooks. But one thing I do with my students is try to get them to get the audiobook of the novels we're reading. So I would recommend 2. One is Winter's Bone. And this is, I only listened to part of the sample of that, but it's a marvelous book. It was turned into a film as well. And I think the writer Daniel Woodrell is really marvelous. And I was just looking to see who was the narrator, but it's very well done. And then I'll give you a second one. Sorry, as a professor, I can't just recommend one book.
No,
Please do.
Professionally,
We'd be able to get that done. We'd be able to get that done on time.
Right. You opened up. You'll see. We got another 30 minutes. But I also love the narrators for Cormac McCarthy novels. And I think those are very well done. It's very spare writing, and I am embarrassed. I can't remember the names of the narrators.
For what book?
But there's two: No Country for Old Men, and also The Road.
My God!
Those are two of them.
Yeah, the Road is absolutely. So usually I start listening to audiobooks and I get to the end of them. I couldn't finish The Road.
Yeah.
It is so well written, and the narration is. I think.
We'll have a look afterwards. We don't want to upset anybody or deprive them of a living. But so you had to stop because it drove you up, because the narration drove you up the wall?
No, it was so dark that I couldn't finish it at that point in my life. So I have it.
Right.
I need to listen to it. The narrator is absolutely fantastic. The writing is superb. But I couldn't finish it at that point in my life. And it wasn't during the pandemic.
The subject matter is pretty grim. And in fact, I moved that novel, The Road, from my fourth-year students to my graduate students because
it is a hard one.
The students were getting so depressed.
Good. Well, that's cheered us up, Steve.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. We are going to hit the road, both literally in terms of the audiobook and metaphorically in terms of the podcast. Next time, a complete 180 gear change. We'll be reviewing The Light We Carry by Michelle Obama. And we'll be joined by, I know, it's like gear change there. And we've also been joined by Helena Sheffield from Penguin Audio to find out a little bit more about the world of Penguin Audio, what's happening there. And also she'll be looking at The Light We Carry with us as well. So that about does it for this show. And thank you again, Michael and Victor, for joining us. We hope to see you very soon because it's been a fantastic hour of conversation, so insightful, and
I'd love
I'm looking
to come
forward.
Back.
Fantastic. We're going to be devouring this series, and we shall see you soon. If you want to say goodbye to our lovely audience, Matt.
Goodbye, lovely audience.
And I want to say thank you for participating to our podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Really nice to have the both of you.
Victor. Yeah, Victor, it was very nice.
So from all of us here,
mainly from Victor. Thank you very much.
Absolutely right.
Thank you for having us on your podcast, Victor.
See you all soon. I'm going to be here.
Thank you for having us on your podcast.
Great.
Audiobook Club with Victor Dima. We'll see you next time. Take care. I have to go. Unfortunately, I've got to attend to the day job, which I'm very late for. I've got a meeting actually.
Thank you for being on the podcast. Bye.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.